Hi, it's Ashley here from Seeds of Hope. Today I thought we could plant some potatoes. We're outside, it's a bit noisy, so I'm sorry about that. So I'm going to show you 3 different containers you can use for growing potatoes. You can also grow them in raised beds or in the ground, but growing them in containers make them a little bit more versatile, so you can move them, put them in sunny spots. You can put them in your backyard, front yard, porch, anywhere that gets a good amount of sun. I have a couple of varieties. Most of these, I bought potatoes and never used them and they sprouted, so I'm kind of curious just to see if I can pop them in the ground. So we have a larger variety here, and you can see it has multiple eyes on it, and these little growth points are called eyes. We have little purple fingerling, which only has kind of the one growth point, and then we have like a golden fingerling. So I have definitely more potatoes than I do space to grow things, but we're gonna plant out what we can, and then I have another space that I can put them in later. So for the fingerlings that only have one eye, I can just plant that as is. What I've heard and the research I've done is you just want to plant one eye. You don't want this to have several eyes on it, because I think you'll get smaller potatoes. You won't get as a robust plant because everything will be growing trying to compete for nutrients. So if it has one eye, you can plant it just like this. For these potatoes, if you wanted just to plant this whole thing, you would take off all of the eyes except one. But you can also take it and cut it. So now you have a part of the potato, but it has one eye on it. And I'm going to let this dry for maybe 24 hours so that it won't, hopefully, like if you planted this in the soil and watered it, it potentially could rot. So I'm going to let them dry. Let's see if I can. But now you have more potato options, basically. I have a couple of them, so I'll just do those. So I'm going to keep these, let them dry, and there's a little raised bed that I can plant them in later. But then you would plant this, and then hopefully that one eye would take over. So we're going to put these aside so they can heal over and dry a bit before we plant them. Okay, so the main container that I'm going to use today is this felt kind of container. It's really loose, and it's just completely made of black felt. I like this for potatoes because you can roll the sides down depending how much soil you're able to put into it. There's 2 ways that I've seen people plant. One is you only fill this up maybe halfway. You plant your potatoes, and then the minute you see green growth, you start mounding on top of it. And as the green growth comes up, you mound more. And then you slowly work your way up to the top. So that's like a mounding method. I've also seen you basically fill your container with the amount of soil that you need. You create trenches, or you, I think, plant them down, I don't know, say like 6 inches, I don't know. You cover them, and then when the green part of the plant does sprout, you only do a little bit of mounding around the base to keep the plant cool. You don't keep mounding. From what I've seen, people have varying successes depending on their climate or the methods they use. I've done the mounding technique in here, and it's worked. I've gotten potatoes out of it. But I think for this time, I'm gonna maybe fill this up with the amount of soil I need, plant them deep, and then when the foliage does come up, I'll just mound a little bit of soil around the base to keep them upright and sturdy and cool. So this is my main container. But I've also seen people grow potatoes in these. You definitely need to create drainage holes, but that's enough space. I would maybe plant 1 or 2 potatoes in there. 1, 2, 3, depending on like if you're doing fingerling. The bigger the potato, the more room it needs. But this is a good idea. I also have this from a tree And it's huge, and it already has drainage holes in it. This probably, you could probably put, 2 or 3 potatoes in it as well. And you could do either method, I'm guessing, is the mounding technique where you just fill it halfway, and as the greenery shows up, you slowly mound it up and up. Or the technique I'm going to try right now is putting in the much soil you need, burying them, and then just giving it a little support as it grows. So we'll see. And I like these because they're easy to move. They're easy to dump out. Like when you're done, you just dump it out, and they're really easy to store. You can just fold it up if you're not using it. So we're gonna do that. I have blue ribbon soil. It's just potting soil, which is really good for containers. So we're gonna stick this in here. And because what I have left are fingerling potatoes, I think it can probably fit several, not just, one. That's why I like this thing too. It's wide. It has a really wide mouth to it, so you can space things out nicely. So let me get this soil in here. Just dump it in. Let's see if I can kind of see. Move it around a bit. You can add more. So that looks pretty good. I mean, that one bag of soil, 1.5 cubic bag, filled this container. I'm going to leave this lip kind of folded down because once the plants grow and I want to mound a little bit, I can flip this up and it'll give it more support. So let me just make sure you guys are good. Okay, so this is what we're working with here. I'm thinking, because we have pretty small fingerling potatoes, I'm first just going to place them to see what this looks like. I think I might try to put in as many as I can. Then we might just do one. Something like that. Because what this will do is create a cluster of potatoes. So I just want to make sure there's enough room for each to kind of get a good cluster going. Okay. So because I'm not doing the mounding method, I filled this up quite a bit. If I was trying to mound, I would only maybe fill it halfway, mound it up. I'm not doing that. So instead, I'm going to be placing them kind of far down. Just kind of moving the soil. I'm not totally sure, like 4 or 5 inches down. Covering them up. What I'll do is I'll give this a really good water because the soil is not super hydrated. We want to hydrate that soil. I'm going to find a sunny spot for it. And then once I start to see foliage, just keep watering it. Maybe I'll flip this part up. And then if it needs a little extra support, a little bit, if it's too hot, I'll add a little bit of soil around the bases. And then from, previous experience, usually you don't want to harvest your potatoes until the foliage starts to kind of yellow and die back, because then all that nutrients is going back into the tubers of the potatoes. You can also sometimes too, when you're later in the season, you can kind of feel around the tops of the plants because you can start to feel some of the potatoes. And you can even sometimes harvest the top potatoes and there'll still be more down below. So I'm kind of curious. We'll see. And I like the fingerlings because I think you get more bang for your buck. If you're using containers, you'll get more out of them than the bigger, huger varieties. If you're doing bigger varieties, having a raised bed or a larger space is helpful. Which is what I'm going to be doing those other potatoes that I cut. I'll put those in raised beds. And I'll do trenching as well. Make trenches, plant, cover, and then just mound to keep them cool and kind of give them some support. But yeah, I think also too, what is it? June? I'm planting potatoes now. I put some in a little while ago and they're coming up. In Southern California, it's fun just to try and experiment, especially places have microclimates. Your place might be hotter or colder, and so some things might last longer than others than a traditional season would. So just go out there and experiment. I mean, who knows? We'll see. These were leftover potatoes, so popping them in some soil and seeing what happens, I think, is worth my time. But yeah, but you know, try anything. Buckets, smaller buckets, maybe. You know, see what works, and then you'll know what works in your what works in your little microclimate. So, well, I hope this was helpful, and I hope your gardens are thriving and doing well. And we'll see you next time.